Fred and William exchanged a glance and decided to return home to talk about what they had heard. Both gnomes were very excited. Fred was the first to speak.
I think we should join the expedition. We need to help them.
William looked at Fred and said,
I'm not so sure, Fred. Do you think we can really help? Gaspar said the journey will be long and dangerous. We've never gone farther than the meadow. Maybe it's too risky.
Fred frowned but quickly smiled with determination.
It's true, we've never gone far or faced any dangers. But you heard Gaspar. The forest is dying. This might reach us sooner or later. We can't just sit and wait. We must do something.
William walked silently. He wanted to help, but the thought of the expedition terrified him. He understood it was necessary, but the dangers ahead made him hesitate. When they reached their homes, Fred said,
Let's think about this carefully tonight, and tomorrow we'll decide. But I think I'll go for sure.
William nodded without saying a word and walked toward his house. The next morning, William knocked on Fred's door early. Fred wasn't asleep. He had barely slept all night. The excitement of the upcoming journey filled his mind, and he couldn't rest. He opened the door and let William in.
Hi, Fred. I thought about what you said, and I've decided I'm going with you.
Fred's face lit up with a big smile.
I'm so glad you've decided. Let's get ready and head to Gaspar for more instructions.
They spent some time gathering what they needed. Fred packed his new backpack, which his grandmother had given him for his birthday. He prepared some food and picked out a few of his best hats. Hats were very important to gnomes. They weren't just for wearing. Each hat symbolized a meaningful part of a gnome's life. For example, when Fred turned 10, he got his first hat. It was blue and a little too big, but he received it after graduating from the gnome school and was ready to help the adult gnomes in the village. William also packed some food, his favorite hat, and of course, a couple of his beloved music boxes. They were ready. Looking back at their homes one last time, they set off. Fred walked with a cheerful bounce in his step, but it was clear that William was nervous. The decision to join Fred hadn't been easy, and he seemed worried. They soon reached the meeting spot, but what they saw wasn't encouraging. The meadow that had been full of gnomes the day before now had only 2 others. Most of the gnomes decided the expedition could manage without them and stayed home. Among the remaining gnomes were Gaspar and a gnome named Louise. Fred and William approached Gaspar, who greeted them warmly.
Good morning, boys. As you can see, there aren't many of us. I'm so grateful you've come. It's going to be a long journey.
William interrupted.
Excuse me, sir. Are you coming with us?
Oh, dear William, I wish I could go with you, but unfortunately, my age has caught up with me, and I can't handle such a long trip.
Fred noticed William's face grow pale. Gaspar continued.
Now, I've prepared a map to guide you to the golden tree.
William interrupted again.
But do we know exactly where the tree is?
To be honest, we don't know its exact location. But don't worry. Previous generations of gnomes left notes, and I used them to create this map.
Gaspar explained the obstacles they might face and showed them how to use a compass. Then, wishing them luck, he left. Now there were only 3 of them. They stood in silence for a moment before Louise broke it.
Hi, I'm Louise. I live on the other side of the village. I don't think we've met before. I've brought lots of useful things. Hats, socks, food, honey, jars of fireflies, bandages, extra clothes.
She went on and on, listing everything she had brought. Fred thought to himself that she might have overpacked. Looking at William, he realized his friend thought the same. When Louise finally finished, after nearly 4 minutes, Fred suggested,
Let's get going before it gets dark.
And with that, the 3 of them set off on their journey. To be continued in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.